All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. The schedule comes out Wednesday night, but there have already been a couple leaks involving a couple of the 49er games. We'll talk about those two coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary and tell them that Krug sent you. And we're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use the promo code KRUG, K-R-U-E-G, and they will match you up to your first $100. Well, the NFL has turned the schedule release into big news. And it's amazing how they turn the whole thing into almost like a week-long event. Well, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, at I think 5 o'clock Pacific, they will announce the schedule in full. Every team's schedule, start to finish. But there's already been a couple leaks, and there are a couple really interesting ones. Now, as far as Niners-Chiefs, we're going to get Niners-Chiefs this year at Levi's Stadium. It's the Super Bowl 58 rematch, Super Bowl 58 and 54 rematch. And it according to a couple printed reports, and these are rumors, this is not substantiated yet, Niners-Chiefs will be week 7 at 125 start time on the West Coast at Levi's Stadium. Niners-Chiefs. Now, I like this. I like the scheduling of this. To me, if you get it late in the year, you just never know about the injuries. If you get it early in the year, I don't know if Dre Greenlaw will be back by week 7. My guess is he won't be. But like Talanoa Hufanga, who's a very key guy in the Niners secondary, I think will be back by week 7. So even if Hufanga can't start week 1, I think he'll be back by week 7. Now, it's an injury-filled sport, and there could be 19 guys that all get hurt in week 6, and the Niners could be very unhealthy. Or Mahomes could go out in week 4, and he could miss the game, and suddenly, the timing is not that great. But I do like the idea of you settle into the season, you get, 5 or 6 games in, and now here come the Chiefs. And it's early enough in the year where I think, it's late enough in the year where you might have a Greenlaw, you might have a Talanoa Hufanga ready, which would be nice. It's also late enough in the year where you're getting into a rhythm. The Niners, as far as their offense is concerned, they're going to have potentially the same, it's the same offense with the same coordinator, the same play caller, but a couple of new weapons. They're trying to introduce a couple new running backs, a couple new wide receivers, maybe a new tight end, possibly a new starter on their offensive line. There'll be some small changes on the offense, but offensive football is about cohesion. And you oftentimes don't have that cohesion early in the year. So I think offensively, week 7 is a perfect time for the Niners to take on the Chiefs. At that point, whatever new players they have will be in rhythm. They might have gotten a couple of their injured defensive stars back on the field. And no matter what happens in the game, you got a lot of season left over to, make up for it if you lose or to try to maintain that standard if you win. It's far enough away from the playoffs where I think there's a lot of football left. And so I think you're, week 7, week 8 in that range is, I think, when you're most likely going to have a healthy football team. You never know, but I kind of like the timing of Niners Chiefs. It's probably still before the rain. So we get rain in Northern California in November. So, if you got week 1's in September and week 4 is in October, week 7 is still late October. So, odds are we're going to have really nice weather. And, this is pre-rain. So you're going to have a good track and you're going to have a 49er offense that at that point, depending on injuries, should be in full rhythm. If they do introduce a couple new players, those guys will be ready to roll at that point. I like the timing. So that's one of the the releases is that we get Niners Chiefs at Levi's, the rematch of Super Bowl 58 and 54 in week 7 at Levi's in Santa Clara. The second one is the second rumor that's been released, and a lot of people think it's a fact, is that the Niners are going to play the New York Jets. And oh, by the way, that game between the Niners and the Chiefs, I will be on CBS, I believe, and Tom Brady will be the broadcaster for that. So how cool is that going to be? You'll have Brady broadcasting a game in his hometown between Brock Purdy, a guy who beat him in his first start, and Patrick Mahomes, who a lot of people think is the next Brady, or maybe he's going to eclipse Brady. So, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of great subplots to Niners Chiefs in week 7. All right. The other one is Niners Jets on Monday Night Football, also at Levi's in week 1 to start the year. Now, I love this announcement because this is, I think, the league sticking it a little bit to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been a thorn to the league with all of his talk about this and that, with the pandemic and, whether he was immunized and this and that. It was probably grossly unfair that his stuff was publicly paraded around when it's his own medical situation. But everybody's got a different thought on that. But he's not one of the NFL's favorite guys. He doesn't make the NFL look good. The NFL, I think, probably has a disdain in some ways for Aaron Rodgers. So what do? They get the Jets on the road week 1, their toughest game of the year, against an offensive coach in Shanahan who could give them all kinds of new wrinkles. And you got Rodgers traveling cross country for the Monday nighter in week 1. Now, why is this major advantage for the Niners? Well, I mean, I think it's a major advantage from the Niners standpoint, just simply because the Jets, what is the big turnover spot for the Jets in this offseason? It's been the offensive line. It's that they redid their offensive line. They've got 3 new starters on a 5-man line. So odds are they're not going to be totally in sync in week 1, or at least not as in sync as they may be down the road. Week 10, week 12, week 13. The Niners are going to get them at Levi's in week 1. And I think that's with an offensive line that's really banged up, or not banged up, that's really has had a lot of turnover. And Aaron Rodgers, who hasn't played in a long time, in his first game with real bullets, not preseason, first real game since the Achilles blowout, on the road against one of the better defenses in football with Nick Bosa and a rejuvenated Niners defensive line, going up against a Jets offensive line that has 3 new starters. So I think that's a major, major advantage for the Niners. So, I don't know what the rest of the schedule is going to look like. Are the Niners going to London to play the Vikings? If so, that's another advantage for the Niners because the Vikings will be the home team. And yet the London crowd will be 80 to 90% Niner fans because the Niners have commandeered the international market, and they're much more of an iconic global brand at this point. So if the kind of like when the Niners played the Cardinals in Mexico City and 90% of the crowd was for the Niners could wind up in the same situation in London. Niners in London against the Vikings, a Viking home game, but 85 to 90% of the crowd rooting for the 49ers. So that's one thing to look for. The other one is, Green Bay and Buffalo. Do you play them before the cold weather sets in, or do you play them in December? If you play them in December, it could be kind of tough. You play them early in the year, I think you got to consider yourself lucky. Conversely, the Niners also play in the 2 hottest spots in Tampa Bay and Miami. Are those games going to be in September? We know it's not week 1 because it's going to be Niners Jets in week 1, but are those going to be September games in the stifling heat and humidity of Florida? Or are those games going to be after Thanksgiving when going to Florida is like a break? It's like a little vacation. Oh man, the rest of the country's cold and rainy and wet and snowy and this and that. And, we're playing the Dolphins, in 75 degrees. So to me, when you play Tampa and Miami, when you play Green Bay and Buffalo, are major components to how difficult the schedule is for the 49ers. But just with the two revelations, you get the Jets with the three new offensive linemen, and Aaron Rodgers in his first game back from the blown Achilles in week 1 at your place. That's advantage Niners. And if you're going to play the Chiefs, you never want to play the Chiefs because the Chiefs are great. But if you want to play the Chiefs, you don't want it to be, really, really late in the year. You don't want it to be really, really early in the year, especially with Afanga and Greenlaw working their way back from injuries. I think you want to catch the Chiefs, in the middle of the year at home, before the rains come. And I think that's where it's going to be. I think it's going to be last week of October, Niners Chiefs at Levi's. So I think the Niners have got to be happy about the placement of the Chiefs game, happy as heck about the placement of the Jets game in week 1. And now we'll find out. Are they going to London in a very advantageous position against the Vikings? And what did the schedule makers do for them as far as hot weather games and cold weather games? Are the Niners going to have to play in, the crazy heat in September and pound all kinds of fluids going into that game so they don't cramp up in the fourth quarter? And are they going to be able to avoid Green Bay and Buffalo in the frozen tundra of December football, either at Lambeau or up in Buffalo? So two of the snowiest places in the entire league. A lot of interesting stuff coming out with the schedule. But today, if you're a 49er fan, based on Jets in week 1 at home and Kansas City in week 7 at home with Brady on the call, I think you got to be feeling pretty good, at least about the 2 games that have been announced thus far. All right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.